We're just getting set up for the next webinar for the Gen 4 International Forum, our GIF webinars. We welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Doing today's introduction, Patricia Pavier. Dr. Pavier is the chair of the GIF Education and Training Task Force responsible for bringing you these webinars. She's also the director within Department of Energy Nuclear Engineering Office of Materials and Chemical Technologies. Without any further ado, I'll turn the time over to Patricia Pavier.
Thank you so much, Berta. It's really a great pleasure to have Professor Yang today giving a webinar on closing the nuclear fuel cycle. Professor Yang graduated from the Seoul National University with a Bachelor of Science in Metallurgical Engineering in 1973 and from the Northwestern University with a PhD in Materials Science and Engineering in 1984. He has been working at the Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute for 30 years on the research and development of PWR, CANDU fuel fabrication, quality control of fuel, DUPIC cycle, and the pyroprocessing. He gained his experience in non-proliferation while participating to the GIF proliferation risk and physical protection activities, as well as the international project on innovative nuclear reactor and fuel cycle activities. He served as the president of KAERI during 2007 to 2010, and he is a member of the National Academy of Engineering of Korea. He is a professor at the Institute of Energy and Environment at Youngsan University of Republic of Korea since 2015. He received the decoration Woong-Bee Order from the Korean government in 2011 and a World Nuclear Association Award in 2009 for his contribution to the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Without any delay, I give you the floor, Professor Yang. I really thank you for volunteering to give this GIF webinar, and I'm ready to listen to you. Thank you, Professor Yang.
Okay, thank you, Patricia, for the nice introduction. And hello, everyone. And I'm Youngsan Yang, and it is my great pleasure to have an opportunity to participate in this webinar. The topic I'm going to talk about today is closing nuclear fuel cycle. The closing the nuclear fuel cycle means the reuse the spent fuel to make the recycling of spent fuel many times possible. Someone used the word used fuel instead of spent fuel because it can be reused, not just discarded as a waste. The outline of my talk is I'll explain the concept of nuclear fuel cycle first, then I'll explain the characteristics of the spent fuel and how they will affect the management of the spent fuel. Then I'll explain briefly the nuclear fuel cycle technology. Since there are so many spent fuel reuse technologies, I just explain the basic concept of the most representative reuse processes. They are PUREX process for wet processing and the Pyroprocess for the dry processing. And then I'll talk about the additional important area to be considered, that is international non-proliferation and the safeguard activities. Since we are talking about nuclear fuel, we have to look at the nuclear reactor system first, because there are different types of nuclear fuel depending on various types of nuclear reactors. This slide shows schematically the nuclear power reactor system of PWR, pressurized water reactor. PWR is the most popular power reactor system in the world. It consists of the pressure vessel where the nuclear fuel is located, and the pressurizer to pressurize the cooling water, and the reactor coolant pump to circulate the coolant and the steam generator. This red-colored system is called a primary loop cooling system. And the heat of the primary loop will be transferred to the secondary loop cooling system at the steam generator. So water in the secondary loop are converted to the steam at the steam generator, and the steam is supplied to the turbine to generate electricity. This secondary loop cooling system is colored as green. And after that, the steam is cooled down at condenser by the seawater, and it is recirculated to the steam generator. And this is called a tertiary loop cooling system, which is colored blue. The nuclear reactor can be classified based on the what level of neutron energy, what level of neutron is used for the fission. For example, it is using thermal neutron, that is energy of neutron is less than 0.1 electron volt, then there is the thermal reactor. And if it is using high energy fast neutron, then it is called fast reactor. Also, the reactor can be classified by what kind of moderator is used. If it is using normal water, then it is called light water reactor, like a PWR and the BWR reactor. And it is using heavy water reactor, then it is called heavy water reactor, so like a CANDU reactor. And if it is using graphite, then it is called graphite reactor. Also, it can be classified by the coolant. If it is using light water, then it is the light water reactor. If it is using heavy water, then it is heavy water reactor. And if it is using liquid sodium or lead, then it is called liquid metal reactor. And if it is using helium gas, then it is called the gas-cooled reactor. And depending on what kind of moderator and coolant are used, the type of nuclear fuel is determined. For example, for the light water reactor, the fuels are made of enriched uranium oxide. The content of uranium-235 in the fuel is about 5%. And for the pressurized heavy water reactor like CANDU reactor, the fuels are made of natural uranium oxide. That means the content of uranium-235 is just 0.7%. And in case of liquid metal reactor, like sodium-cooled fast reactor, the fuel can be made of mixed oxide uranium and plutonium, which is called MOX fuel. And moreover, the fuel for SFR also can be made of metallic form, which is made of metallic alloy of uranium, plutonium, and other transuranic elements. And this slide shows the concept of nuclear fuel cycle. In this slide, the nuclear fuel cycle for PWR is shown as an example. The fuel cycle starts from the uranium mining, and after the uranium ores are mined, the impurities are removed at the milling and the refining process, and then the pure uranium nitrate, called the yellow cake, and the uranium oxide are supplied to the conversion plant. And at the conversion process, the uranium oxide is converted to the uranium fluoride form. Then at enrichment stage, the uranium fluoride is changed to the gaseous form by heating. Then by using this uranium fluoride gas, the isotopic content of uranium-235 can be increased up to 5% to be used for the nuclear fuel. The enriched uranium fluoride is deconverted to enriched uranium oxide at the deconversion plant. Then the enriched uranium oxide is fabricated to the nuclear fuel assembly by using powder metallurgy techniques with zirconium cladding tube and with other structural parts. Then nuclear fuel assembly are loaded to the nuclear reactor and burned at reactor for around 3 years to generate electricity. And the process steps from the uranium mining to the fuel fabrication before loading to the nuclear reactor is called front-end fuel cycle. And after 3 years of burning in reactor, the fuels are discharged from the reactor as a spent fuel. Then, nowadays frequently it's called as a used fuel. And the process steps from the discharge of the fuel from reactor and the following processes are called as the back-end fuel cycle. And in the back-end fuel cycle, there are various ways to treat the spent fuel. The simplest one is the spent fuel is stored at the interim storage facility for a period of time. Then the spent fuel is buried under the ground at the high-level waste disposal site. And this type of fuel cycle is called once-through fuel cycle or open fuel cycle. And the other way is the spent fuel from the interim storage is moved to the reprocessing facility. And at reprocessing, the remained uranium and the newly produced plutoniums are recovered from the spent fuel. And then the plutonium is fabricated as the plutonium-bearing mixed oxide fuel or TRU fuel, and which will be reburned at the reactor. And after the plutonium-bearing fuel is reburned at reactors, the spent MOX or TRU fuel will be again reprocessed to remove the impurity and to recover the uranium and the plutonium, and which will be again refabricated as a fuel. So theoretically, this type of reprocessing is possible. This type of recycling is possible for the several times. So this type of fuel cycle is closed fuel cycle. And this slide shows schematically several examples of the possible fuel cycle alternatives. Regarding back-end fuel cycle, theoretically, many fuel cycle alternatives are possible. They say more than 60 fuel cycle alternatives are possible. But there are two main routes. There is one is dry process route, and the other one is the wet route. And first one is spent fuel will be treated by the wet process called the PUREX process to recover the remained uranium and plutonium. Then the recovered plutonium is fabricated as a MOX fuel. And also for the recovered uranium, it will be converted to the fluoride form and enriched to be used as a uranium fuel for the PWR reactor. And the second one is the spent fuel will be treated by the dry process called pyroprocessing to retrieve the remained uranium and plutonium with other TRU materials. And then the uranium and the TRU materials will be fabricated as fuel for the fast reactor, like a sodium-cooled fast reactor. And the other possible way is PWR fuel is directly refabricated for the fuel of heavy water reactor like a CANDU. As the content of the fissile material in the spent PWR fuel is large enough to be used in CANDU reactor, whose fuel is made of natural uranium. And this process is called DUPIC process. And the other option is the spent fuel is treated by dry process to recover the trans-uranium material with fission products like iodine and technetium. And then the material is fabricated as a target for the accelerator-driven system. And at the accelerator-driven system, the long-lived fission product will be transmitted to the short-lived element. So this will be beneficial for the management of hazardous long-lived fission products. So this is called HYPER system. HYPER stands for the hybrid power extraction reactor. So when we are dealing with the nuclear fuel cycle, one important issue is nuclear non-proliferation. So for the enrichment process in the front-end fuel cycle, since the highly enriched uranium can be used for the nuclear weapon material, the enrichment process is the internationally sensitive area. And for the reprocessing steps in the back-end fuel cycle, since the pure plutonium can be used for the nuclear weapon material, so the reprocessing process, especially which can produce the pure plutonium, is also internationally sensitive area. And this slide shows the typical example of the composition of the spent fuel. Surely, the spent fuel has various composition depending on the initial enrichment level and the burn-up history at reactor. In case of 4.5% U-235 enriched fuel, which is burned up to 55 gigawatts, then the composition of spent fuel is roughly looks like this. So fresh nuclear fuel is made of 100% pure uranium. But in the spent fuel, the 94% of spent fuel is composed of the remained uranium. So it means only about 6% of uranium is burned in the reactor. And during the burning, the uranium is converted to the plutonium, and the amount of plutonium is about 1%. And 0.2% of spent fuel is the minor actinide element, such as neptunium, americium, curium, and so on. And the plutonium and the minor actinide elements are called a TRU element. Then that means transuranic element. And during the fission, various fission products are produced, and among them, several elements need special attention. Iodine and the technetium has the long half-life. They are long-lived fission products, which need more longer period of special care for the permanent disposal. And the amount of these long-lived fission products are about 0.2%. And some fission products like cesium and strontium has a high decay heat, which also need special care for the permanent disposal. And the amount of high decay heat elements are about 0.5%. And the remained fission product has a short half-life, less than 300 years, and its amount is about 4%. So therefore, for the best management of spent fuel, we need to close the fuel cycle. That means reusing the remaining fissile material in the spent fuel, and that means the 94% of remained uranium and the 1.3% of TRU material will be recovered and recycled in the reactor. And about 5% of fission product will be separated and specially treated and disposed permanently at the repository site. And this slide shows the amount of decay heat generated, which decreases as time passes by. When nuclear fuel is irradiated in the reactor, some elements become unstable, so they tend to be changed to the stable state by emitting heat. And we call this as decay heat. And the amount of decay heat and its change over time is very important factor for the permanent disposal of spent fuel. The decay heat is the characteristic of spent fuel. That is, even though nuclear fuel is discharged from reactor, the spent fuel generates decay heat. So spent fuel should be cooled down for a period of time. For example, in case of uranium, the amount of decay heat is 0.1 watt. It's quite small, but it does not change much with time. But in case of praseodymium, the decay heat is about 5,000 watts. It's quite large, but it is decreasing quite fast. So it will be almost zero in 20 years. And in case of plutonium, the decay heat is around 200 watts, and it is relatively large, and it lasts very, very long time. So it needs almost 1 million years to be cooled down. Collectively, the change of decay heat from all the fission products are shown in this red curve. So it shows that the decay heat from the fission product will be cooled down in about 300 years. And the change of decay heat from all the actinide, including plutonium and americium, etc., are shown in this blue curve. The initial decay heat is large, about 1,000 watts, and it lasts about 1 million years to be cooled down. So the change of the grand total value of decay heat are shown in the black curve. The initial value is large, and it also lasts very, very long, mainly because of TRU element. So therefore, this fact is the reason why we need to reprocess the spent fuel. That is, the actinide elements are separated from the spent fuel, and they will be reburned at the fast reactor. And if the TRU elements are removed from the spent fuel, then it will only need about 300 years to cool down the decay heat. And this slide shows the comparison of the radiotoxicity with that of natural uranium. For the spent fuel, which contains the plutonium, minor actinide, and all the fission products, the value of radiotoxicity is about 1,000 times larger than that of natural uranium, and it takes about 300,000 years to decrease to that of natural uranium level. And for the materials, which contains minor actinide and the fission product without plutonium, it takes about 15,000 years to become natural uranium level. And for the materials which contains only fission product without plutonium and the minor actinide, it will take about 300 years. So this time to decrease the radiotoxicity to the natural level is the time period for which we need to manage the permanent waste disposal site. So if the spent fuel is not treated at all and directly disposed, then waste disposal site needed to be managed over 300,000 years. But if all the TRU materials are partitioned, and it needs about 300 years for the disposal site management. And this is why we are developing the advanced fuel cycle to remove the TRU element and to reuse them by burning a fast reactor. So that is to close the fuel cycle. And regarding the interim storage of the spent fuel, when the spent fuels are discharged from the reactor, they are normally stored under the water about 10 years to cool down the decay heat. Then after 10 years of wet storage, they can be moved to the dry storage canister to store them more economically. And eventually, the spent fuel and high-level waste will be moved to the repository for the permanent disposal. And this slide shows the typical example of permanent disposal site. On surface, there are encapsulation and the bentonite plant to seal the radioactive waste and the other service facility. And under the ground, there are vertical shafts for service activity and ventilation, and there are horizontal tunnels to store the encapsulated waste safely for long periods of time. When we select the permanent disposal site like this, there are some special considerations needed. So they are, how will the prolonged exposure to heat and radiation from the waste affect the surrounding rock? So that is the long-term integrity of the engineering and the natural barrier under high radiation and heat environment is important. So we should consider radiation shielding of the canister and the maximum allowable thermal loading of the disposal package. And the second point is, how soon will the repository be filled with groundwater? That is, the prevention of groundwater intrusion. So this requires the selection of a buffer and the backfill material with low permeability. And the third thing is, how fast will the disposal canister corrode? So this requires that the canister is made of high corrosion resistant material like copper, titanium, and stainless steel, etc. And the fourth point is, how fast will the various radionuclides dissolve? And how will the dissolved substance travel through the rock? So the groundwater movement in the rock is an important factor. So considering the long-term integrity and the safety of the disposal, it is not easy to select the proper waste disposal site in terms of engineering viewpoint. Moreover, it is also not easy to get the public consent and acceptance. So currently, in many countries, including South Korea, have such a challenge to select the waste disposal site. So this is another reason why we need to develop the advanced fuel cycle technology to close the nuclear fuel cycle in purpose of to reduce the amount of radioactive waste and to reduce the necessary area for the permanent disposal of the spent fuel and to decrease the time period needed to manage the final disposal site. In the first of 2000, there are some international efforts to develop innovative nuclear energy systems. The main activities are led by GIF and IAEA. The objective of this effort for innovative nuclear systems are to improve the sustainability and for the optimal waste management and the environmental effect and improving the economics and also enhancing the proliferation resistance. And this slide shows the basic requirement of the advanced fuel cycle. So for the environmental aspect, it will reduce the environmental burden by reducing the radiotoxicity of spent fuel. So the target is the decay time of spent fuel to the toxicity level to the natural uranium should be less than 300 years. And for the waste aspect, it will minimize the required repository footprint. So that is, by reducing the heat load of waste by 100, the necessary repository footprint also can be reduced by 100. And for the proliferation risk aspect, the proliferation resistance can be enhanced by recycling all the TRU material together based on the concept of so-called dirty fuel, clean waste. And for the economical aspect, the new technology should be economically compatible with the current technical option. Even though a lot of technology alternatives are proposed for the treatment of spent fuel, it can be classified roughly by two methods. They are wet processing routes like PUREX and dry processing route like pyroprocessing. And I'm going to explain this process more detail at the following slide. The product from the PUREX process can be used for the PWR and the Gen 4 reactor as a max fuel. And the product from the pyroprocessing can be used for the fuel of Gen 4 reactor as a metallic fuel. And one of the interesting concepts is DUPIC. So where the spent PWR fuel will be directly refabricated as a fuel for the CANDU type reactor. So this is a typical example of the concept so-called the dirty fuel and the clean waste. So in past, we tried to make a nuclear fuel with high purity material in order to attain high burn-up and for ease of the fuel management. But this produced hazardous radioactive waste. So recently, we tried to make a fuel with the uranium and TRU element, and they will be reburned at the reactor. So in this way, we can make it easy to manage the clean radioactive waste. So this slide shows the process flows of each reusing process. And this slide shows the overall process flow of radioprocessing like a PUREX process. So it's composed of 6 areas. So first is receiving the spent fuel cask, and they will be stored under the water. And second is the disassembling, chopping, and the dissolving area. So here, the fuel assembly is chopped to the small piece, and they will be dissolved in the nitric acid. And in this process, uranium, plutonium, and some fission products are dissolved in the nitric acid, but the metallic part, like cladding tubes, are not dissolved. So this kind of solid metallic part can be separated from nitric acid fuel solution. And those stages are called head-end process. And third area is the separation area. So here, it is to separate the uranium and the plutonium solution from the fission product by using solvent extraction. Then, by using the uranium and plutonium mixtures, which are free from fission product, plutonium can again be separated from uranium by solvent extraction. And the fourth area is the purification area. So it is to purify separated uranium and the plutonium from remaining impurity by using solvent extraction. And the fifth area is the denitration area. So it is to denitrate the uranium and the plutonium nitrate to produce the pure uranium and the plutonium material. Then uranium and plutonium is converted to oxide for storage. So this slide shows the main equipment and its function in the PUREX process. For the disassembly and the chopping of the fuel, mechanical and the laser method can be used. and dissolving is to dissolve the fuel material in nitric acid. And here the fuel material can be separated from the structural part. And during this process, radioactive gases will be released from the fuel. So this off-gas treatment by adsorption columns and the HEPA filter is also important area. And uranium plutonium extraction purification can be performed by solvent extraction methods by using equipment like mixer settler and the pulsed column. Then pure uranium and plutonium material can be produced by the denitration using evaporators. And along with these processes, the radioactive process waste treatment is also very important. So the waste is the volume reduced by evaporator and the compactor, and then it will be solidified by the cementation and the vitrification. So this slide shows the basic concept of solvent extraction, which is commonly used in the ordinary chemical plant. So that is solvent and the fuel solution with the fission product will be mixed together. Then on dissolving fission product will be settled down to the bottom part, and the uranium and plutonium, which are dissolved in the solvent, will be located at the upper part. In this way, they can be separated each other. So in this process, the most popular process equipment used are mixer settler or pulsed column. And this type of mixer settler can be arranged in series to repeat the mixing and the settling process to achieve higher purity. The pulsed column has very similar function with regarding the mixing and the settling by pulsing. So nowadays, PUREX process is well developed and commercialized by the 5 weapon states, Japan, and India. By using PUREX process, uranium and plutonium oxide mixed fuel, called MOX fuel, can be fabricated, and it can be used at the current light water reactor. And this is called flue thermal recycling. However, nowadays, more advanced wet reprocessing is under development to improve the economics, proliferation resistance, and the volume reduction of the high-level waste. That is, by producing the uranium and the plutonium with other long-lived nuclides together, and by burning them in fast reactor, they can be transmuted to the short-lived element for the environmentally friendly recycling. Also, by recovering uranium and the fissile element like plutonium in the spent fuel and burning them, we can improve the uranium utilization by completely closing the nuclear fuel cycle. And moreover, by partitioning the long-lived nuclide and the highly heat-generating element from the waste, we can improve the efficiency of permanent waste disposal by reducing the volume of high-level waste and by shortening the management period of permanent disposal site. And several advanced wet processes are under development, such as coal decontamination and the actinide lanthanide separation process to separate uranium, plutonium, and the TRU together in the USA. And next process development to separate uranium, plutonium, neptunium in Japan. And COEX process development to separate uranium, plutonium together in France. So mainly, the objective of this technology development are to improve the recovery of TRU, cesium, strontium, which are high decay element and also long-lived fission element, and to reduce secondary process waste amount, and to co-separate uranium, plutonium, minor actinide, and actinide lanthanide partition, and to use the eco-friendly salt-free solvent. So these researches nowadays performed under the GIF program. So this slide shows the one example of nuclear fuel cycle strategy which can be used for some country with heavy water reactor like CANDU and the fast reactor like sodium-cooled fast reactor. So the spent PWR fuel can be directly fabricated as a DUPIC fuel to be used as a CANDU reactor. And also spent PWR can be treated by the dry pyroprocessing to produce the metallic fuel made of uranium and the TRU element and the zirconium. Then they will be used as a fuel for the sodium-cooled fast reactor. And in this way, we can save the permanent disposal space of the waste, and it can improve the uranium utilization. And also, this dry process has the intrinsic proliferation resistance. So this slide shows schematically the process flow of the DUPIC fuel fabrication. So the spent PWR fuel is disassembled and cut to small pieces, and they are depleted by mechanical and thermal method. Then the spent fuel materials are treated by a series of oxidation and reduction to make the fuel powder soft and porous and disintegrable. And once the disintegrable powder is prepared, then the remaining fabrication processes are same as the typical CANDU fuel fabrication. So this concept has been proved at the laboratory scale, and the performance were evaluated by the evaluation at the research reactor in cooperation with South Korea, Canada, and the USA, but it has not been commercialized. And this slide shows the characteristic of the dry processing method. So there are several dry processing technologies. So the pyrometallurgical process is developed for the metallic fuel fabrication at the EBR2 program in USA in early 1950s. And the pyrochemical process are under development in South Korea, USA, China, India, Russia, etc. And the fluoride volatility process are mainly for treating the research reactor fuel. So the dry process has a high proliferation resistance because it does not separate pure plutonium, and the fuel with a mixture of uranium, plutonium, and the minor actinide can be fabricated and to be used at the Gen 4 type reactors. This slide shows the closed fuel cycle for the pyroprocessing linked with the sodium fast reactor. So at first, the PWR spent fuel is disassembled. Then the spent fuel material will be located at the cathode basket, and the anode is made of platinum. Then the electrolyte reduction will take place in the molten salt. And the uranium and the TRU oxide will be reduced to the metallic form here. The next step is the electro-refining process. Here, the metallized uranium, plutonium, and the minor actinide and the fission products are placed at the anode. And here, uranium will be recovered at the solid cathode, and the TRU and the fission product and the residual uranium will be dissolved in the salt. And next process is the electrowinning process. So by using liquid cadmium as a cathode, uranium and the TLU material in the salt can be recovered at the cathode. Then cadmium will be distillated. Then recovered uranium and TLU material can be used for the sodium phosphate reactor fuel fabrication. So by using the spent fuel in this way, the uranium utilization can be increased by a factor of 100, and also the volume of the high-level waste can be reduced. And moreover, as the sodium phosphate reactor can burn the long-lived TLUs, it can reduce the radiotoxicity, decreasing time. And this means you can shorten the management period of the deep geological repository to a few hundred years. In this pyroprocessing, there are no stream of pure plutonium separation, and the product are a mixture of uranium and TLU material. So this process can be considered as a highly proliferation resistant. This slide shows the material flow in the pyroprocessing. So the spent fuel is disassembled, and the rot elements are cut to small pieces. Then the rot cut are declared by mechanical and the thermal methods. And then recovered fuel materials are subject to the high temperature treatment to get rid of off gas like iodine, krypton, and the xenon. Then the oxide material composed of uranium, TLU, and the fission products are reduced to the metallic form at the electroreduction process. Then the metallic uranium, TLU, noble metal, and the rare earth elements are treated by the electrowinning to recover uranium, and that is treated by the uranium refining to recover the uranium, and treated by the electrowinning to recover the TLU material. And then the uranium and the TLU material will be used for the sodium phosphate reactor fuel fabrication. And then the spent SFR fuel will again be recycled in this way to close the fuel cycle. So this slide shows the one example of chemical reaction in the electrolyte reduction. So the reaction occurs at the cathode is for the reduction, and the reaction at the anode is for the oxidation. And after this electroreduction process, the uranium and the TLU element like plutonium, americium, curium, neptunium, and the noble metal like zirconium and palladium will be reduced to the metallic form. But rare earth elements like yttrium are not reduced, and the alkali material and alkali and earth material like cesium and strontium will be remained in the soil. So this slide shows the conceptual comparison of these wet and dry recycling routes. So regarding the complexity of process, that means the compactness of the process. Pyroprocessing is rather compact. And for the cooling time needed for the spent fuel to be processed, PUREX process requires more than 5 years cooling to be treated, but pyroprocessing can process spent fuel that is just cooled about 1 year. And regarding the criticality hazard, the PUREX process has a high criticality because you use the wet process. And the PUREX process can separate the pure plutonium, but in case of pyroprocessing, the pure separation of pure plutonium is rather difficult. And however, the pyroprocessing is just under development in the laboratory scale, and while the PUREX is already commercialized in the world. And moreover, the pyroprocessing is producing more process waste, and it is basically batch type process. So you need more development for the large scale production. So currently, there are R&D efforts to improve the pyroprocessing. The research objectives are, for the process development, it is to develop high throughput process and to develop corrosion resistant material. And the second is for the process waste minimization by recycling the used salt. And the third is to improve the safeguardability by developing near real-time accounting techniques and design improvement of the facility design stages. And to improve the economic feasibility by the process modeling and to have the integrated engineering scale demonstration. So when we are dealing with nuclear fuel cycle, one important issue is nuclear non-proliferation. So from the beginning of IAEA, the international efforts were made to encourage peaceful use of nuclear energy while ensuring prevention of diversion of nuclear technology. So nuclear non-proliferation regime means the system to prevent the diversion of peaceful use technology from military use and to prevent the nuclear weapon test to improve it. So the latter is called vertical proliferation and the former is called horizontal proliferation. That means increasing the number of countries with nuclear weapons. So for the prevention of the horizontal proliferation, there are various preventive measures like safeguard and export control and the physical protection. And among them, safeguard measures play the most important role. So the safeguard can be defined as all the activity that impede the diversion of undeclared production of nuclear material. So it's composed of material control and accounting, and containment and surveillance, and IAEA inspection, including the recording, reporting, and the verification is also important activity. And moreover, when we develop new fuel cycle technology, we had better consider the safeguardability of the process in advance to make the process easy to be safeguarded. The safeguardability is defined as the degree of ease with which IAEA technical objective can be met in cost effectiveness, and to establish facility whose process design layout supports the effective and efficient implementation of IAEA safeguards. So the pyro process has rather a lower proliferation potential compared with other fuel cycle technology because it has a limited capability in separating pure plutonium. And also, it has less flexibility in changing the product purity and throughput. And the high dose of uranium and the TRU product requires additional radiation shielding, so it makes the diversion very difficult. However, in these more development to solve safeguard challenges for the pyro processing. So the first is there are less experience for the safeguard practice because there are no commercial scale pyro processing facility yet. And second is there are larger measurement uncertainty of feed, product, waste, and processed materials. And so the sampling procedures, including destructive analysis and non-destructive analysis, and the process parameter are not well established yet. And moreover, a current signature and the indicator of IAEA physical model needed to be updated for the pyroprocessing application. So therefore, in parallel to the process technology development, the safeguard R&D has better be performed simultaneously. So the R&D area for the safeguard of the pyroprocessing are to develop the nuclear material accounting and surveillance technology, and to design the safeguard system based on the concept so-called safeguard by design, and to investigate the safeguardability of pyroprocessing facilities. And this slide shows some examples of safeguard R&D. So safeguard neutron counter is to measure the amount of sensitive material in non-destructive method. And this is a passive neutron coincidence counter with a full remote maintenance capability. And another one is containment and surveillance system development. This containment and surveillance monitoring data is transmitted to the regulatory body and the IAEA through virtual private network. And another example is to develop laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy monitoring system. So this is to determine the elemental composition of samples through real-time analysis. And by using this system, the in-situ measurement and the multi-element analysis will be possible. And before making a decision to invest a big budget, we need to perform the economical analysis of the fuel cycle. So the dynamic behavior of the nuclear energy system economics was performed by comparing the total system cost for the one-through fuel cycle with those for the closed fuel cycle associated with the pyroprocessing and SFR. So the tentative study result shows that, for example, regarding the total system cost, the closed nuclear energy system is a little bit more expensive than that of one-through system. But regarding the fuel cycle cost only, the once-through fuel cycle is expected to increase the cost of electricity by about 7% compared to that of the closed fuel cycle. However, the levelized cost distribution of the two nuclear systems is very similar because of large cost uncertainty involved with all the system steps. So it requires further technology development and the demonstration on the engineering commercial scale basis in order to prove the cost saving for the closed system. And this slide shows some representative comparison of nuclear fuel cycle policy of the major countries in the world. For example, in Korea, the fuel cycle policy will be determined later. The so-called, we are in the wait and see stage. So that means it will be decided later, considering the result of current ongoing pyroprocessing research. Then the demonstration research will be completed by the end of 2020. And the recycling route proposed is combining the pyroprocessing and the sodium cooled fast reactor with the metallic fuel. for Japan, they are using the radioprocessing with the sodium phosphate reactor with the oxide fuel. So for the other countries' policy, the details are shown in this slide. So in summary, the closing the fuel cycle has many benefits like sustainability by reusing remaining fissile materials, and the benefit for high-level waste management by reducing its volume and the radiotoxicity, and the benefit of environmental protection. It also helps to cope with the challenges to find the permanent disposal site by reducing its required repository footprint and the management period. And along with commercialized wet reprocessing route, the advanced wet process and the dry pyroprocess technologies are under development to recover uranium and the TRU elements together and to reuse them in advanced Gen 4 fast reactors. And the safeguard technology development is also important for the closing fuel cycle because a closing fuel cycle deals with sensitive nuclear material. And national policy for the fuel cycle and spent fuel management will be decided based on the progress of current R&D efforts. So thank you for the attention. And this slide shows the upcoming webinar. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yang. The upcoming webinars in November, we have an introduction to nuclear reactor design by Dr. Claude Renault with France. In December, a sodium-cooled fast reactors presentation by Dr. Robert Hill in the USA. And in January, a very high temperature reactors presentation by Dr. Carl Sink, also from the USA. If you have questions for Dr. Yang, please go ahead and type those into the chat pod now, and we will take as many of those as we have time for. So, Professor Yang, if you click, do you see the first question I see is...
The first question is, are there currently any plan to use the MOX fuel in commercial reactor in the USA? So I think we have to better answer the question.
I'm sorry? Oh, Patricia.
So the first question is from the Dr. Littman. But I think, that question is, are there any currently plans to use the MOX fuel in the USA? So I think, you had to better answer that question for me.
Yeah, okay. So this is Patricia Pavier from DOE, and no, for the moment, there's no plan to use mixed oxide fuel in the US.
Dr. Littman also has a question about cesium-137, strontium-90, and americium-241.
Yes, I think also that question is, that has better be, answered by Patricia, right?
Okay, and I don't see the question, Bertha. Oh, okay, I see it now. Cesium, strontium, americium are radionuclide waste, yeah, from the fuel cycle that have many beneficial uses. Are there any current or planned program to attend the recovery? Okay, in the United States, until 2008, we developed the PUREX process where there was a plan to extract cesium and strontium. But unfortunately, when you go from R&D to engineering scale and then industrial scale, you realize that you're generating a lot of streams, and some of the streams are not compatible, so which means that you increase the waste. So right now we have stopped any research on extracting cesium and strontium. We are pursuing more a robust and simplified flow sheet. It's based, basically you would dissolve the spent fuel in nitric acid, And then we have two paths, either a heterogeneous recycling or an homogeneous recycling. Homogeneous will try to extract all of the actinide of importance, basically uranium, plutonium, neptunium, americium. And for the heterogeneous, we will start with a modified PUREX process, uranium, plutonium, neptunium, followed by the ALSEP process, which stands for actinide-lanthanide separation process, where you would separate the trivalent actinide, americium corium, from the trivalent lanthanide. It's using a acidic extractant combined with the neutral extractant. So yes, for the americium, we have a lot of research going on. We are also investigating the oxidation of americium-3 to americium-6.
Great. Then there's
okay,
another.
so thank you for you. Yeah, so and the other question is also regarding the sodium fuel, molten salt reactor, and also I think I need some advice from the Patricia.
Oh, okay. Let's see what. I do not see the question right now. So,
okay.
Problem with safeguards in countries currently without nuclear capability is that there is a certain reliability in the work community on honesty or participation in truthful expansion. Would we all be better served by putting more effort in the, and I don't see in the what?
Into the development of thorium MSRs.
Okay, for the moment, the United States are not focusing on the thorium fuel cycle at all. We are focusing on uranium fuel cycle.
And also the question from the Mr. Farah is for the radiotoxicity with the spent nuclear fuel treatment. Yeah, so actually you are right. So that the radiotoxicity is based on the external exposure and the intake of the radionuclides together. So, for the details, so I do not have them material right now, but the radiotoxicity is a kind of collective concept. So the other question is there a minimum of nuclear power plant or annual spent nuclear fuel generation for establishing the closing the fuel cycle? Yeah, surely, yeah, that is a very good question. And when we perform the economical analysis of the fuel cycle, we have to assume the minimum amount of spent fuel. So, and also that is depending on what kind of nuclear fuel technology we are going to use. So in case of pyroprocessing, since that is mainly based on the batch type process, so small amount of spent nuclear fuel can be treated. But in case of wet process, so since that is a continuous process, so they need a large amount of spent fuel. So surely there is some minimum of nuclear power plant and spent fuel generation for closing the fuel cycle. But surely, that the minimum amount is depending on what kind of fuel cycle technology we are going to use. So the other question is what are the issues that need to be resolved before pyroprocessing become commercialized? Yeah, that is also a very challenging question. Nowadays, the feasibility of pyroprocessing is proved just at the laboratory level. So, to become that, so in order for that pyroprocess to become commercialized, sure you have many technology obstacles. Surely, to find the optimum process parameter could be, one challenge. So, but the big challenge is mainly pyroprocessing is the batch type process. So, to be commercialized, to have a large scale processing of the pyro technology will be challenging one. So that is why, we are performing that kind of researches. So in coming 5 years, the feasibility of pyroprocessing will be evaluated in terms of technical feasibility and the safeguardability, and also in terms of economics. So maybe I can answer more clearly in coming 5 years later. Then about 5 years later.
Great. The next question deals with research by the AEC in the 1960s.
Let me see.
I know there was research by the AEC in the 1960s into the SFRs in the USA. What is the current direction towards the use of this type in the USA?
So also I need, I need advice from Patricia.
Yeah, right. We're going to have actually a presentation, and I refer Tim Welty, who asked, I know there was research by the AEC in the 60s into sodium fast reactors in the USA. What's the current direction towards the use of this type in the USA? Bob Hill from Argonne National Laboratory is our National Technical Director, and I really invite you to listen to his webinar in 2 months on the 15th of December, and I guess he will answer your questions. Yes, we are pursuing research on sodium fast reactors and other type of reactors.
So I think no more questions. So I think there are no more questions, and thank you very much for your attention. And my presentation is quite actually a bit long, but
yeah, thank you so much, Professor Yang. That was a very comprehensive presentation. And as we always said, these webinars are archived. That's the beauty of them. So you feel free to send to your colleagues the link on gen-4.org, and they will be posted very soon. We thank you very much for your attention. I give the floor to Bertrand.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Professor Yang. Lisa, thank you as always for running behind the scenes there. And thanks to everyone who took time out of their day to join us. In the USA, these presentations are early, and we appreciate people getting up to join us for learning more about nuclear energy. I think with that, we will adjourn and look forward to reconvening on the 22nd of November for an introduction to nuclear reactor design.
Thank you, Bertrand.
okay. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Professor Yang.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Lisa. Bye-bye.